sleep or die. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Human Betterment Project. Today, we are going to talk about sleep, or more accurately, how you are not doing it right or getting enough. So, funny story. This is actually the second time that I'm recording this because I forgot to hit record on the first one. So, anyways, now that you know that, um, I recently read a book by a neuroscientist and sleep researcher named Dr. Matthew Walker. It's called Why We Sleep: Unlocking the Power of Sleep and Dreams. Um, it's a really interesting book that describes the science and research behind the mystery of sleep. Why do we need it? How much do we need? And how do we improve our sleep? So, the book is a little bit terrifying, actually, because he talks about the societal and individual ramifications and consequences for not getting enough sleep. So, how much sleep does he recommend? He says about 8 or 9 hours of sleep, um, but the majority of us are just not getting that much. We're getting more like 5 to 6 hours of sleep, maybe, and that's a consequence of our society is just constantly telling us go go go. I'll sleep when I die. That's the mantra, right? But he talks about how, um, especially when it comes to like driving accidents and things like that, that it is actually worse to be an hour short on sleep, the sleep you need for one night, than it is to be impaired behind the wheel. And he has the statistics to back this up. So you might be like, why would that be worse? Well, the what he describes is that when a drunk person or a person impaired by alcohol is in an auto accident, that generally speaking, they do respond to the outside stimulus that causes the accident. So they do hit the brakes. They just don't hit them fast enough. It's the reaction time that's slow. But when somebody is lacking sleep, they tend to fall into these micro sleeps that they call them, where somebody drifts off for 3 seconds, 5 seconds. It's just a small fraction of time, but that small fraction of time is enough to get into an accident, and they're not going to hit the brakes. They're just going to hit that other car full tilt because there is no reaction time because the person's asleep. And so the accidents tend to be higher speed, no braking, and usually more devastating because of that. Um, and he also talks about how the lack of sleep in society is actually probably the cause of the majority of our health issues that we see in modern society. There's so many things in modern society right now that are new health concerns that were never an issue before. Think obesity, heart conditions, depression, anxiety, asthma, stuff like that. His contention is that he used to think that sleep was one of the pillars of health, like how exercise and diet would be a pillar of health. But now he says, no, that's not the way it is. Sleep is the foundation of health. Sleep is what all other pillars of health is built upon. And if you have a bad foundation or bad sleep in this case, it's all going to fall apart. So he talks about some societal changes that and societal issues that are making the sleep uh, more of a problem than it was in the past. I mean, this is a modern problem. So I just want to go over some of these and talk about what he says about it and kind of like my thoughts about it and stuff. So one thing that he points out, and you may not even realize this or think about it, is that there's just too many lights. Like light pollution is a real thing, and there's especially too much blue light. So all of our devices, computers, TVs, your iPhone, your Android, whatever you're using, your Nintendo, all of those things are putting out a blue light frequency, and that blue light frequency is the same frequency that tells your brain that it's time to get up, it's time to be active, it's daylight, right? So, especially using those things later at night or a few hours before bed has the effect of canceling out the brain's natural circadian rhythm to be like, oh, it's time to sleep, right? So a great example of like how bad the light pollution is, like think about your average city, your average town. There's like neon lights maybe, or like signage that's lit up everywhere. I don't know if you've ever seen like when there's like spotlights for like an opening of something. Just a ton of light that's being emitted into the atmosphere. And you might think like, oh, it's not a big deal. But if you've never seen what it should look like without all that light pollution and the stark difference, you're gonna you be dumbfounded. So I had this experience when I was probably like 12 or 13. I was in like a Boy Scouts kind of organization, and they had a huge camping trip thing, the statewide camping trip that they would do every summer. And different, I guess, troops, we'll call them, from different cities and everything would go to a location in Eastern Washington, and we'd have like these camp games, basically, like who ties the best knots and who sets up camp fastest, and like and physical challenges like rope walking and all this other stuff. It was a blast. It was a lot of fun, but it was like a 5 day long thing. So this particular area in Eastern Washington that they chose to hold all these different troops from the state. I mean, there must have been 100 different troops. It was probably like this 40-acre or more lot. Actually, it might have been bigger than that. That was in the middle of Eastern Washington, kind of up on a mountain a little bit. So really secluded, and no town or city for probably, I don't know, a good 30 miles or more. So really in the middle of nowhere. And I remember the night that we were staying at, we stayed up late and we are like cooking s'mores and stuff like that. That's what you do when you're camping. And I remember looking up at the night sky, and it was completely clear and no clouds in the sky or anything like that. And the stark difference between the night sky you can see when there's no light pollution and no clouds, versus what you see in a city is so dramatic. You can see the cosmic dust of the Milky Way, and you could see why they call it the Milky Way. You can see orders of magnitude higher stars. Like the number of stars is ridiculous. It's not just the big ones that you see in constellations. You see all these tiny little, spots of light that you would not normally see. And if you're lucky enough to see shooting stars, you see them like racing across the sky, and it's just this amazing, surreal moment where you realize, how large the universe is and stuff. And don't think people realize that is how it's supposed to be, and we are pumping out so much artificial light in the cities and in our towns and our houses that the human body hasn't really developed over time to deal with that, because it is expecting a particular day-night cycle of light to regulate its circadian rhythm and help with sleep. So that's a big issue. Another big issue is the amount of alcohol being consumed. And it's not really whether alcohol is good or bad for you. I mean, people have these arguments: is a glass of wine good or is it not? Whatever. That's not really what this is about. This is about the effects that alcohol has on your circadian rhythm and on your sleep. What it does is it blunts the ability for you to fall into a deep REM sleep, or more accurately, I believe, an NREM sleep, which is a different level of REM sleep where a large amount of the restorative healing properties of sleep happen. And that could have detrimental effects to your health, basically. Oddly enough, he says that The lack of sleep is so bad right now in people that it is probably the reason why people are so sick these days. And it's getting worse. So just keep that in mind. Too much heat at night is also not good, but it's a societal thing. Like we heat our houses and we keep them cozy and stuff, but the body and the brain were meant to notice a body temperature change, an internal body temperature change at night, and use that as a signal to start to shut the processes down for sleep. So because we artificially as a society are keeping things at a higher temperature through, modern convenience, then that tends to mess with our circadian rhythms. Another one, and this is a big one, and I'm sure we all will relate to this one, is the idea of enforced wake up times. And this is just the way that the work ethic system, especially in America, has been created over time, is that you got to get up really early, go to work really early. I mean, how many of us are at work at like 6 in the morning or earlier? Um, when we were in high school, for those people in especially in the states, it's like, oh, I had 6 a.m. morning swim. That's what it was for me, anyways. So as an adolescent in high school, you were expected to get up extremely early for school, and you are pretty much all through your school career. I mean, even in grade school and middle school, you were up like early. But it especially gets bad in high school. And this is actually the exact opposite of what should be happening with adolescents, according to Dr. Walker, during that time. So as a society, we're telling people to get up really early, especially adolescents, but there's a reason that teenagers want to sleep in so much, and it's because they need it for proper brain development. And he goes into great detail about this. But the most restorative part of sleep is not the first half when you first fall asleep or even the middle. It's actually the last couple hours of sleep. So as a society, we're basically cutting off the most beneficial part of sleep, is as like the last 2 hours or 3 hours of sleep, and we're doing it to adolescents at the time that they need it the most for proper brain development. And this just has a huge effect on adolescents, even more so than older people, because it starts to cause things like depression and mood swings and all kinds of other like problems and stunted brain development, and it's just in like inability to comprehend the concepts that they're learning at school. It actually works completely to the opposite of the goal that it's trying to achieve. And then for people that are in the workforce, it's the same thing. We're cutting off the most beneficial part of the sleep cycle, and but then we're expecting people to perform at a high level when they've never hit that restorative part. And it's because we expect people to come in really early and stay really late. So we're never getting the real efficient, well rested person. And I don't really know how to fix that per se. That would take a massive societal change to fix that particular issue. And he goes into some detail about policy changes and stuff on how he would fix that and individual changes. But you can only fix you. Policy changes take a long time, and societal changes take even longer. But it's good that he's highlighting this issue with the way society is structured to actually make our sleep worse, and how it has these devastating effects to us: higher blood pressure, higher obesity rates, higher heart attacks, car accidents, brain fogginess, anxiety, depression. The list just goes on and on. It's actually terrifying the amount of things that he says are affected by a lack of sleep, and it makes you understand why he calls it the platform, or the foundation of health, not a pillar. But uh, you should really read this and kind of absorb some of the challenges that he talks about with changing the societal part of it and what we can do, and maybe we can make some change that would help people live healthier lives by allowing them to get the sleep that's required. Some of the really scary stuff in here is when he's talking about like Alzheimer's and stuff like that, and how there's a direct correlation to lack of sleep. And I mean, over the years, we've seen a rise in Alzheimer cases that seems to correlate with less and less sleep that people are getting. Um, and you might be like, "Oh, I'm fine getting 5 or 6 hours of sleep. I'm perfectly okay with it. I function fine." Maybe. Um, he says that there are some people that have a genetic marker, which I can't remember what he calls that genetic marker exactly. The correct one, you'll have to read the book. Um, that does allow them to operate with 5 or 6 hours of sleep with no effect on the obesity, the brain cognition, the healing, any of that stuff. But you're probably not one of them. The number of people that have this particular genetic marker, I think he said, is 1% of 1%. So the idea that you might have it is probably not true. What's probably going on is you don't actually know what it feels like to be properly rested. So you don't know what your baseline functioning would be, your baseline health, your baseline, cognitive ability, your baseline energy levels, because you only know what it feels like to be in perpetual sleep debt of with that 5 to 6 hours. So your baseline for understanding what it means to be fully rested is completely off, and you've kind of fooled yourself into thinking that 5 or 6 hours is enough. So I wanted to go over like these 12 rules he gives for improving your sleep, and kind of go into a little bit of detail about them. So he gives these 12 rules at the end of the book, and number one is stick to a sleep schedule. It doesn't matter if it's the weekend. You should go to bed and wake up at the same time each day. People have a really hard time adjusting to changes in their sleep patterns. I know when I've tried to change my sleep patterns, it's really difficult. But sleeping later on the weekends actually doesn't make up for the sleep debt that you accrue during the weekdays. The damage has been done already. So think about how much damage you've done in your life. Let's just say your adult life, because you don't really have much control over what happens when you're in high school and stuff and you have to wake up that early. But just as an adult, think about how much sleep you've missed out on by burning the midnight oil and working early in the morning and staying late and not sleeping, kind of thing, only getting those 4 hours of sleep like over and over and over again. Think about the damage that you've caused already and that you've accrued, and there's no way you could make that up over a weekday. And it turns out that that's not even the way the brain works. The damage has been done already. Each day is its own like insulated experiment of time, basically, where you need to get that amount of time in that day. So he recommends setting an alarm for bedtime. It seems a little weird because we normally only set alarms for getting up, but he says you should set an alarm for bedtime, just so that oh, I'm trying to stay on this particular schedule, and have the same wake up and go to sleep time, no matter what the day is. So this is actually his number one piece of advice, and he says that if there's any other piece of advice that he'd recommend above the other ones, that this is the one, because it's that important to having a set amount of time that's the same time every day and the same length of time every day, which is what he recommends, about 8 to 9 hours. You might be asking like why cut off at 9 hours, but apparently, and he doesn't go into at least I don't think he goes into too much detail about this from my recollection, but there is a such thing as too much sleep, and after 9 hours there seems to be a little bit of a bump back into the bad category, but not as much as having not enough sleep. So number two, exercise is great, but not too late in the day. He says you should try to exercise at least 30 minutes each day, but no later than 2 or 3 hours before you go to bed. I believe the reasoning for this is that the body temperature issue. So as your body temperature drops at night with the natural cooling of night, that's a signal to your brain to go to sleep. And if you go exercise, you're going to get your heart rate up, your body temperature goes up, and it's going to be a little while before it gets back down to normal, plus the temperature decrease. So you don't want to just get back down to like daytime normal. You want to get down to like nighttime body temperatures and nighttime um, uh, like circadian rhythms basically, and it's going to take heart rate. That's what I was going to say. You want to get down to like your nighttime heart rate and that relaxation, kind of thing that helps you fall asleep. So you don't want to do it like right before bed. It's got to be like 2 or 3 hours before bed at the latest. Avoid caffeine and nicotine. Coffee, colas, certain teas, and chocolate all contain caffeine. Its effects can take as long as 8 hours to wear off fully. He mentions in the book that, and I didn't know this, that the half-life of caffeine, the caffeine molecule, is 14 hours. So if you don't know what a half-life is, it's basically the time it takes for a particular molecule to lose 50% of its, I'll say potency, its strength, 50% of its strength. So let's use an example of plutonium or something crazy like that. That's something radioactive. And let's say it has a half-life of 50 years. So that means that for its given radioactive value, it would take 50 years to get to 50% of that radioactive value, and then another 50 years to get to half of half, so 25%, and so on and so on. So it takes a long time to completely dissipate. So the caffeine, if you think about this, if it has a half-life of 14 hours, whatever caffeine you ingested would take 14 hours to cut in half, 28 hours to be at 25%, and so on and so forth. So it actually takes a lot longer. The effects might wear off after 8 hours, but it's still in your system. And I think that's why, if you've ever tried to quit coffee, I think that's why some people get a headache after about day 3, because then I think about day 3 is when it's completely left your system, right? Because you're talking about those half-lives. So then it's finally left your system completely, and now you're suffering from like the total withdrawal of caffeine. So a cup of coffee can make it really hard for you to fall asleep at night. This is a really hard one for me. I am a big coffee fan, but recently I tried, because I'm reading this book, I decided to cut out caffeine, which means no coffee. And I am about at day 10, and I do notice a significant improvement in my sleep. I really miss the coffee though. So, it's not the caffeine so much for me, because I feel pretty good. I feel actually really good after 10 days of no caffeine, but I do miss I'm one of those people that actually does like the taste of coffee. I'm not in it for the caffeine per se. That was just an extra bonus when you're feeling kind of tired. But I actually just like the taste and like the experience of drinking coffee. So I'm trying to find a way to reintegrate that, but maybe keep the caffeine really low. I'm thinking about maybe decaf, and I don't think that would kill the experience for me. Hopefully, we'll see. But I don't really drink a whole lot of soda, or anything like that. My caffeine came predominantly from coffee. So that it's been a little rough. Not from a I feel bad kind of way. I actually had no withdrawal headaches or anything like that, which was amazing. But I just missed the experience. So hopefully I can switch to like decaf, or maybe only drink the caffeine occasionally, like on a weekend or something like that. But we'll see how that goes. But nicotine is also a stimulant, and it often causes smokers to sleep really lightly. And he makes a point that and I mentioned this earlier, that the most important part of the sleep is actually the deep sleep when you hit REM and NREM sleep. And the most important part of sleep is that back half as well. So you need deep sleep, and it needs to be probably more towards the morning time. And a problem with smokers is they often wake up too early in the morning because they're having that nicotine withdrawal. So they're getting hit from two different directions. One, they don't go deep enough into sleep, and then two, they're waking up too early to get the full benefits of the NREM healing cycle. Um, Another one is avoid alcoholic drinks before bed. So having a nightcap or alcoholic beverage before you sleep might help you relax. I think that's the whole point of a nightcap. But heavy use of alcohol actually robs you of your REM sleep, which is that restorative sleep, and that includes the NREM. Um, or it'll keep you in the lighter stages of sleep. And heavy alcohol ingestion can also contribute to like impairment in your breathing at night, which could also have problems with being able to achieve that deep sleep. It also might wake you up in the middle of the night as the alcohol wears off. Your brain will like kind of kick back on and wake you up in the middle of the night. Avoid large meals and beverages late at night. A light snack is fine, but the worry here is that a large meal might cause indigestion, which interferes with sleep. And drinking too many fluids at night can cause you to wake up to have to go to the bathroom a lot, which you're just interrupting that NREM sleep, and it has to go through those cycles to get that healing benefit. So the less interruptions, the better. If possible, avoid medicines that delay or disrupt your sleep. This is not medical advice. This is just what he recommended. I'm not saying to do anything, but this is just for your own knowledge. Some commonly prescribed things that can cause disruptions in your sleep are heart medicines, blood pressure medicines, asthma medications, as well as some over-the-counter things like allergy medicines, herbal medicines, cough, cold medicines. All those kind of things can possibly disrupt your sleep. And like I said before, we're trying to get as few disruptions as possible so that you can get the full benefit of those REM to light to NREM cycles of sleep that he talks about in the book that are the healing of your body. Don't take naps after 3 p.m. Naps can help make up for lost sleep, but if you take a nap too late, then it can make it harder to fall asleep later that evening. So you kind of have to weigh the pros and cons here and be like, if I take a nap at this time and I have to be in bed a couple hours later, is that gonna cause a problem? Then maybe avoid doing that. Relax before bed. Don't overschedule your day so that so you don't have any time to relax. And we kind of talked about this in the time management episode. Maybe when you're managing your time and you're kind of coming up with blocks of time on what the purpose for that block is, maybe the purpose is relaxing before bed. That relaxing activity can be reading or listening to music, whatever it is that helps you relax. But he says it should be part of your bedtime ritual as you get ready to go to bed. 9 is take a hot bath before bed. It's not really so much about the bath per se. I mean, that might be relaxing, which goes back to the last one, but it's more about the drop in body temperature from going from the hot bath to your house like temperature. Might help you fall asleep or feel sleepy. And the bath, like I said, could help you relax, help you slow down your evening, kind of get you into that mode of I need to go to bed. So it's interesting we had a heat wave here recently where it was like 110 degrees, and the houses were even hotter inside at night because like all the heat's got captured inside the house. So it became almost impossible to fall asleep that night because there was no drop in body temperature. Like it just stayed hot all night. So that's part of the reason that it was hard to sleep, was because not only are you miserable because it's 110 degrees all day, but you never got that cool down effect that helps trigger the brain to be like, okay, it's time to go to bed. Dark bedrooms, cool bedroom, gadget-free bedroom. So get rid of anything in your room that will distract you from sleep. Things like noises, bright lights, an uncomfortable bed, and warm temperatures, like we said before. You sleep better if your temperature is on the cooler side in your bedroom. They actually recommend like pretty cold. Like people would say this is cold, but they're saying like 68 degrees, maybe 66. I was a little surprised at how cool they recommended it be. Um, you want no TV, no cell phone, and no computer in the bedroom if you can manage it, because you don't want the distractions of those things to prevent you from sleeping or sleeping well. You don't want like bright blue light going off from like your phone in the middle of the night, or like the sound of a text message like blinging. You know, TVs are especially bad in the bedroom because you tend to just watch it until you fall asleep, and then as you're asleep, you have this constant noise being generated from the TV. You have flashing lights, blue lights, stuff like that, and it's not going to allow you to fall into like a deeper sleep. It's just this constant. If you are asleep, it's probably going to be like a light disruptive sleep. Um, so, um, and if you can manage to do without a computer in your room, especially modern computers, if you've seen them, they all have like these flashing lights, like flashing fans, and it's just like this circus of lights basically. And I don't really know when that started happening, but I can't imagine having one of those in my room and being able to fall asleep. It would just be distracting, and they're noisy. They're very noisy. So have the right sunlight exposure. So daylight is the key to regulating your sleep, um, and the sleep patterns, and that goes back to that circadian rhythm of the brain is being triggered by lights. So he recommends you try to get outside in natural sunlight for at least 30 minutes a day. If possible, you should try to wake up with the sun or use really bright lights in the morning. So if you, this is, I could see this especially if, like here in the winter, by the time we wake up for work, even if you wake up at like later in the day, like 7 or something like that, in the winter, it is dark. So it's hard to wake up with the sun because you're supposed to be at work already usually. So I could see that's where it'd be like you wake up and you turn on lights, bright lights, to like trigger your brain to be like, it's time to get up, it's go time, it's daylight. So sleep experts recommend that if you're having problems falling asleep, you should get like an hour of exposure to morning sunlight and turn down the lights before bedtime. So this would be good. Like during the summertime, it's the opposite problem where the sun comes up really early in the morning. I mean, really early. Sometimes it's up at like 5 or earlier, 4 something in the morning, and then it stays out until 10:30. And if you have to be in bed for work by 9:30, it's still really bright outside. So get your morning exposure to light, and then in the afternoon pull the shades and like lower the lights and kind of simulate that dark, so that your brain goes, okay, it's time to start shutting down, go into sleep mode basically. um the last one's really interesting, because it seems almost counterintuitive, but basically he's saying don't lie in bed awake. If you find yourself still awake after laying in bed for like 20 minutes, then, or if you start feeling anxious or worried that you're not falling asleep, you should just get up and do something relaxing, like we talked about earlier, like reading a book, listening to music, whatever helps you relax, meditate, whatever it is for you. Do that until you feel sleepy, and then go back to bed. The anxiety of not being able to sleep can actually make it harder to fall asleep, he says. And I think a lot of us have probably had this experience where you're laying in bed and you have to be up for work in the next morning, but you just can't fall asleep, and you just keep looking at the clock, looking over at the clock, and you start doing that math, the sleeping math, where you're like, if I fall asleep in the next 5 minutes, I can get 5 hours of sleep. And then that 5 minutes doesn't happen in that 5 minutes. And then you're like, well, if I fall asleep in the next 15 minutes, I can get 4 hours and 45 minutes of sleep, and then I'll probably be okay. And you just keep like worrying yourself about it. Don't do that. Go find something to make yourself relax. Like get up, read a book, listen to music, whatever it is that you need to relax. And then once you start feeling sleepy again, then go back to bed. So I want to talk about a couple things that might help you kind of biohack or like hack the sleep things that he's talking about here. Um, so he talks about the waking up with the sunrise and going to bed with the sunset, and also keeping your room like super dark and stuff. It's hard to do all those simultaneously, because if you use blackout curtains, how are you going to see the sunrise? Um, you know what I mean? So, um, and like really, what you want in a good sleeping environment is what he says is darkness, coldness or coolness, and then sunlight, basically. So how can we get all of those? If you've ever been to a hotel, you notice you sleep a little heavier, like a little better. And the reason for that, I think, is because each room has its own air conditioner that's kept at a pretty cool temperature. The blankets tend to be really heavy, right? And there's some studies showing that like heavy blankets help you feel more relaxed and fall asleep better. And then they have blackout curtains, so it's kind of like perfect environment for getting really like deep sleep. Other than the fact that you're not at your own house, which is kind of weird, but I wanted to talk about this product that I picked up. This is the Sound Oasis GST. Let me double check the model number here. GTS 3000. So I found this online, and so this is an eye mask, a sleep eye mask. Um, so I got this because blackout curtains seemed to be overkill because I wanted to be able to use the sunrise method that he talked about as well. So, but I also wanted the complete darkness that he talks about. Um, Unfortunately, I do have some electronic devices in my bedroom. Mostly, it's just my phone because I use that as the alarm clock, but that can produce enough light. Or if you have like a fan going in there or something, it's a digital fan, so the light from the digital readout is enough to brighten up the room, which is weird. But I wanted to black out my sleep because it's supposed to help a lot. So I got this, and the reason I got this instead of just an average eye mask, there's a couple reasons. One, this has like a recessed like eye spot. So if you ever tried using a standard eye mask, it's like pressed right up against your face. It's the most annoying thing in the world, to have something on your face like that. This is like super comfortable. I can open up my eyes and blink and stuff, and I don't feel it like hitting my eye at all. Um, but the real reason I got this is because there is an LED system built inside these white pieces here, that simulate the sunset and the sunrise. So let me turn it on real quick. I'll show you the sunset. So the sunset is this red light. And apparently this red light frequency is enough to simulate the sun setting and will trick your brain into that circadian rhythm of, oh, it's time to sleep. And my thinking was that this is great during the summer because, like I said, in the summer, it's light out until sometimes 11 o'clock at night, and I gotta go to bed at like, or I should go to bed at like 9:30, because I'm working like 10-hour shifts right now. So I have to be up very early for work and then go to bed very early. So the idea was that I would use this to black out the sun, when it's super bright out at 10 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night. But I could still get that sunset simulation to the brain. Um, the sunrise simulation, I'm not gonna be able to do it on camera here, but it's a light blue light instead. And like we talked about before, that blue light although usually you should try to avoid it, like especially in the afternoon with those like blue blocking glasses and stuff. That is the frequency that tells our brains that it's time to get up and go. That is a sunrise, like sort of energetic frequency that's like, okay, let's go get stuff done. Um, so if I had complaints about this, I've been using this for a couple days now. If I had some complaints about it, there's a couple usability issues, and then there's a technology issue that I found kind of annoying. Um, One is that red light for the sunset is a little intense. So if I set it for a 10-minute sunset, the first 5 to 6 minutes are a little too intense. The last four are actually pretty nice. It does help put you in a relaxed mode. Um, and I think this might be similar to, I'll have to do research on this, but there's this idea of red light therapy at night that's supposed to help you relax and stuff. And I think it might be trying to do the same thing. So I'm actually wondering if instead of using the sunset simulator on here, that it might be better to use an actual red light like therapy lamp at night before you go to bed. I don't know if it does the same thing, but I'd be curious to do more research on that. The blue sunrise light, on the other hand, is very nice. It's pleasant. It does wake me up. I usually wake up before my alarm clock when that happens, and I don't feel like I'm being jarred out of sleep. It kind of like eases you out of sleep, and it does it over like a 30-minute time period. So it starts out really, really, really light, and then gets a little more intense over like 30 minutes, like a real sunrise. I'm not sure how far into that 30 minutes I wake up, but I'm going to say it's probably about 25 minutes into the 30 minutes because there's also a sound that goes off in this thing when your alarm is ready. It's kind of a backup to wake you up. And usually I'm up for a couple minutes before I hear it go off. So I'd say it wakes me up probably about 25 to 27 minutes into the sunrise cycle. My other complaint is a technical complaint. So you charge it and you sync it to the app that it comes with through a micro USB connector inside the this zipper here. They send you this cord, which is the micro USB to headphone jack. That's kind of weird, right? So the problem with this is if you have anything higher than an iPhone 7, where do you plug this in? iPhones don't have a phone head jack anymore. You know, so you have to use an adapter to go headphone jack to Lightning. Thankfully, this came with my iPhone because I have like an iPhone 10 or something. But I actually don't think these come with the newer iPhones. And so this seems like a weird way to sync the device in 2021. I'm really surprised that it doesn't come with a Bluetooth connection to sync up the device. So, like I said, I've been using this for a few days. I have noticed an improvement in my sleep and the energy I have when I wake up. And I have the metrics for that as well. I could see how many sleep disturbances I have, my length of sleep, and how well I'm recovering based on heart rate variability. And I do that through this like Whoop device that I have. It's a fitness tracker that I've talked about before. I usually just use this to track my workouts and how much like cardiovascular strain that I've been putting on and how well I'm recovering in my sleep. So because I'm already tracking that sleep recovery, I can actually see the difference that this makes through, in my recovery and how many disturbances I have, how deeply I'm sleeping, things like that. Another thing I want to talk about is sort of this biohacking, these ideas that he talks about is the temperature issue. So, like I said, there was a major heat wave here, it's been like 2 weeks now, I think, where it was like 110 degrees, which is like unheard of here. So there is a product called, I believe the company is called Chilisleep, and they sell a product called Chili Pad and Chili Blanket. Um, so these are similar to those old um, electric blankets. Do you remember those electric blankets that had like heating like elements like ran through them, like metal elements? That seems so unsafe, by the way. But it's the opposite. This is designed to give you that 68-degree or 66-degree temperature that's supposed to be ideal for falling asleep. So I've never tried these, but I would love to try them eventually. They're a little pricey. I think they have sales every now and then. Matter of fact, the only reason I bought this sleep mask is because it was on sale for 4th of July. But it was a really good deal. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten it. But the Chilisleep system is a pad is one option, but the other option is a blanket, a weighted blanket, because there's some studies that show that the weight of the blankets can help you fall asleep and stay in deeper sleep as well. But these are water regulated, so there's a cooler that pumps cooled water or chilled water through the blanket and through this cooling pad. So you can basically create this cocoon of coolness that's the ideal temperature for falling asleep. And then you can kind of play around with that and set it to what you need personally. I mean, maybe you need it colder, maybe you need it a little warmer. Like I tend to sleep really hot, so for me, like I would crank that thing down probably to like the 68 or 66 or whatever. But it's an interesting idea, and maybe someday I can actually try it out and I can give a review on that and talk about how it'll help us with this sleep foundation. But there's other products that, like, I think there's something called a bed jet that's kind of like a little pipe thing that fits in underneath your blankets and kind of blows cold air on you. It's basically like a bed air conditioner. But I was just thinking about how hard it was to sleep on that really hot night, and how if I had that Chilisleep system, it wouldn't have been a problem because I would have got that body temperature drop that is important for falling asleep and having deep sleep. So just some ideas to throw out there for helping you to get better sleep. Also, find a relaxation system, whether that's like reading or meditation or something to bring you down at the end of the night. That could really help you too. Remember the 12 tips that Dr. Walker gives. So I felt like this was important to talk about for the Human Betterment Project, because here we talk a lot, or we're trying to talk a lot about physical betterment and emotional betterment, mental betterment, all this other stuff, and financial. I guess the financial pillar doesn't really count on this, really, maybe a little bit. But these physical health ideas that are part of becoming better. If sleep is really the foundation of all the other health pillars, like he says, then I think it's really important to talk about this and talk about how we as individuals can at least change how we're sleeping and how we're bettering our health through that. We may not be able to make these big societal or policy changes quickly. Hopefully, these are things that we can work on as a society, but at least we can change ourselves, right? Like we can change the individual easier than we can change the society or the policies. So I thought that it was an important thing to bring up, because it will have improvement. It'll cause improvements in all the other aspects of your life: better mental health, better emotional health, better physical health. And as far as the financial pillar goes, if those other three are looking good, then you might be able to focus more on that financial part, like, you know what I mean? Or maybe, your physical health is good now, so you're not spending as much money on your, medical bills or something like that, because you have that health from the sleep part. So it really can become this foundational part of your health. So I just thought it was really important to talk about this. I thought the book was really interesting. Like I said, it is Why We Sleep: Unlocking the Power of Sleep and Dreams by Dr. Matthew Walker. He is a professor of neuroscience and psychology at UC Berkeley, and the director of the Center for Human Sleep Science, and apparently a former professor of psychiatry at Harvard also. I think he's actually English, but he teaches out of UC Berkeley, which I believe is in California. I'm going to get roasted if that's not right. But I highly recommend the book. I didn't nearly go into detail he does. He talks about the wild experiments that people did to figure out some of this stuff, sleeping in caves for like I think it was like weeks, like 5 6 weeks in a dark cave to see if you know the circadian rhythm was natural or something that we were like imposing on ourselves, or just really wild stuff that these sleep scientists do, things that they study that I didn't even think fell into the category of sleep science. I thought sleep science was like sleep apnea and insomnia and stuff like that, but they are studying not just sleep deficiencies, but what does sleep do and how does sleep help us. So it's not just a studying of the deficiencies of sleep, but it's a studying of like the good of sleep and the efficiency and what the health of sleep and the science, like, because it really, like, the dreaming part, like why do we dream, he goes into that. It's really a mystery, like on I mean there's some ideas about like um the dreams and the sleep building our long-term memory and stuff, and that being a huge preventer of Alzheimer's and stuff like that. And but the real reason is a little bit of a mystery, but he does talk about it. So I'd recommend this book if you want to. I also would recommend this sleep mask. I'll put a link in the descriptions if you're interested, especially if it's on sale. I really like the wake up part of it, the sunrise part. That's really nice. The sunset's a bit intense, but and I'll also put a link to the Chilisleep thing so you can see what I'm talking about. Like I said, I haven't tried it, so don't take my word for it or anything. It's just an interesting concept, and a lot of people that are like type A like personalities have talked about using stuff like that. I'm reading another book right now by Tim Ferriss called Tools of the Titans, and the Chilisleep systems come up multiple times on how people are getting good sleep. So I would love to try it at some point, but like I said, it's a little spendy, and but it's definitely something you might want to look into. If you tend to sleep hot or like sleep cold, because it also heats up, I believe, like during the winter, so you can just maintain that same temperature year round. But I would encourage everybody to, if you're not going to read the book, at least try some of the 12 steps that we talked about, I'm sorry, not steps, the 12 tips that we talked about on how to get better sleep, and see if you just try a couple of them, at least, and see if it helps you get better sleep, and if that better sleep also helps you with the other aspects of your health, like your mental health, your energy levels, your physical performance, memory, all that stuff. And if you try some of these and you have a really good benefit that you got out of it, let me know in the comments. And if you want to keep seeing content like this, please like and subscribe. I really want to see this channel grow. I'd like to make it more dynamic. I'd like to go interview more people and really turn it into this like neat, like, dynamic, exciting, show. And I cannot do that unless I get your guys' support. So please like and subscribe and just keep watching. It really helps out. And I just really appreciate you guys watching. I'm having a lot of fun doing this, and I hope to bring you more soon. So have a great one, guys.